clicked on this video, you are either expecting a libtard who you can destroy in the comments, or you genuinely want to know what fascism is. I ask of you to just keep your opinions on the side and just listen to the facts, and after that you can comment down below what you think. When watching this, please do not forget that whatever the government is saying, it will never be truly on your side. Not until everyone can afford to get sick, can afford to buy good foods, and can afford a good home on a basic salary. Do not let people in power fool you that the problem comes from underneath you. The government will not give out a press release stating it's officially become a fascist state.
Remember, kids, the next time that somebody tells you the government wouldn't do that, oh yes they would.
My name is Julia, and here are my thoughts on fascism in America and Germany. What even is fascism? Let's look at two different definitions and then summarize them after. The dictionary defines fascism as an American word and as a noun. It's a governmental system led by a dictator having complete power, forcibly suppressing opposition and criticism, regimenting all industry, commerce, etc., and emphasizing an aggressive nationalism and often racism. Now let's look at the definition from Wikipedia, which has a lot of hard words in it. Let's just look at it, and then after we can again analyze it. Fascism is a far-right, authoritarian, and ultranationalist political ideology and movement that rose to prominence in the early 20th century Europe. Fascism is characterized by support for a dictatorial leader, centralized autocracy, militarism, forcible suppression of opposition, belief in a natural social hierarchy, subordination of individual interests for the perceived interests of the nation or race, and strong regiment of society and the economy. Opposed to communism, democracy, liberalism, pluralism, and socialism, fascism is at the far right of traditional left-right spectrum. So, what have you learned? Fascism is a far-right political philosophy or theory of government that emerged in the early 20th century. It prioritizes the nation over the individual who exists to serve the nation. Core characteristics include an autocratic government, dictatorial leadership, and the violent suppression of opposition. Fascism is further characterized by ultranationalistic, militaristic, and totalitarian principles, strictly rejects liberalism, communism, and socialism. The term is derived from the Italian word fascio, which means bundle, symbolizing unity and the power of the state. But when is a state officially a fascist state? There is no rigid rule on how many characteristics must be met, but political scientists have defined identifying features. A state is often considered fascist if it combines the following criteria. Dictatorial leadership, which is a central government under an authoritarian leader who often fosters a cult of personality and claims to embody the national will. A one-party system, where other political parties are banned or suppressed. A strong control over social and economic life, as well as the media, called regimentation. An exaltation of nation and or race, which means the well-being of the national or ethnic community is placed above individual rights. Violence is often celebrated as a legitimate means to achieve national goals. There are many scientists who specify these kind of political sciences. For example, political scientist Dr. Lawrence Britt, who wrote an article about fascism called Fascism Anyone in 2003 for the Free Inquiry, and he studied the fascist regimes of Hitler, Mussolini, Franco, Suharto, and Pinochet. Dr. Britt found they all had 14 elements in common, and I'm just going to put the 14 elements on screen right now. You can pause the video and read through them, but in the second half of this video, I think it's the 5th chapter, we will go through these characteristics one by one and analyze the American state and the German state against those characteristics. But why is fascism bad? Fascism is depicted negatively in sources due to its destructive effects on human society. This means human rights are disregarded, starting with the poorest and weakest of society. The poor, the elderly, and children. Individual freedoms, equality and protections are ignored in favor of the state power. Dehumanization and violence promote the marginalization of minorities, who are labeled as a scapegoat, leading to systematic persecutions and violence, mostly without fair trial. Possible. Hatred is so rampant against the scapegoat minority that no fair trial could ever be possible. Censorship and propaganda also plays a huge role, with official news outlets stating untrue facts or censoring situations in news. A free flow of information is stopped and reality is distorted. All these factors play into the destruction of democracy. Democracy is a system of government in which the power rests with the people. This means having the opportunity to participate in decisions, often through the voting for representatives or directly voting for leaders. Democracy emphasizes principles like freedom, equality, majority rule with majority rights, and political engagement for all citizens. Let's look at some examples and consequences of a fascist state. The most famous historical examples are Mussolini's Italy, which was from 1922 to 1945, and Nazi Germany under Adolf Hitler, which was from 1933 to 1945. Other examples of regimes with fascist elements include Spain under Franco, Indonesia under Suharto, and Chile under Pinochet. Systematic murder of millions of people, including Jews, people with disabilities, and minorities, which are defined as genocide and Holocaust. Fascist states tend toward territorial expansion through armed conflict, which led to World War II and immense destruction. Citizens lose all privacy and freedom, dissidents are imprisoned in concentration camps or murdered. It is a totally controlled state. Through the constant search for scapegoats and the glorification of struggle and war, social cohesion is destroyed. Now let's look at the 40 characteristics of Dr. Britt again, and if Germany and America are becoming fascist states, or if they already are fascist states, or if they have no correlation to fascist characteristics anyhow. Let's look at the first characteristic, powerful and continuing nationalism. Fascist regimes tend to make constant use of patriotic mottos, slogans, symbols, songs, and other paraphernalia. Flags are seen everywhere, as are flag symbols and clothing and public displays. In America, these are very clearly the MAGA merge and paraphernalia. America has always had a huge history with patriotism, but now there's a clear dividend between just the flags and being American and being a Trump supporter with all the Make America Great Again merge. In Germany, it's different. The news outlet called Stern states that the National Socialist slogans are getting more and more popular. National Socialistic means Nazism. But here it needs to be said that Germany has a difficult history with patriotism. Ever since the Second World War, that word patriotic leaves just a weird taste in people's mouths. This goes so far that Germans who openly call themselves patriotic are more often than not part of the far right. And there isn't a correlation between first being patriotic and people thinking you are Nazi, which of course that exists too, but it's more like normal people or people that aren't far right would rather try to avoid calling themselves patriotic, even though most of Germans love living in Germany because, as I said before, there is a weird connotation to Nazism. The second characteristic is disdain for the recognition of human rights. Because of the fear of enemies and the need for security, the people in fascist regimes are persuaded that human rights can be ignored in certain cases because of need. The people tend to look the other way or even approve of torture, summary executions, assassinations, long incarcerations of prisoners, etc. This is clearly seen in America in the incitement against illegal immigrants. I'm putting it in quotes because there have been a lot of incidents where ICE, a paramilitary organization focusing on finding and deporting illegal immigrants, arrested citizens who have the right to stay in America. Even the holding centers are a violation of human rights, with detained immigrants detailing physical abuse and inhumane conditions. Once again, all the sources are in the description where you can find them and read them through yourself. Now let's look at Germany. There are many reports currently that show police using excessive force during peaceful protests by climate activists and supporters of Palestinian rights. Discrimination and sexism, especially in politics, are heavily on the rise. The current Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, has made many racist and sexist comments. As for an example, he commented that the reason why women don't vote for him, but from another person from a different party, is because Friedrich Merz is lacking the good looks. Characteristic is the identification of enemies or scapegoats as unifying cause. The people are rallied into unifying patriotic frenzy over the need to eliminate a perceived common threat or foe: racial, ethnic or religious minorities, liberals, communists, socialists, terrorists, etc. Again, this is seen in America with the illegal immigrants. State officials have started using the term illegal aliens, which dehumanizes immigrants to the public, making it easier to justify taking human rights from them, making them easy to hate, kill and torture. With the rise of the far-right party AfD, certain dehumanizing terms have been used in official political settings. AfD is the far-right party in Germany, and a direct translation from AfD is Alternative for Germany. AfD is currently the second strongest party in Germany. I've linked German websites down below that organize the hateful sayings because there are just way too many for this short video. If you hear these hateful sayings and think to yourself that you agree, that you also think that the problem lies with the certain minority, that they are to blame for all this, maybe you are a veteran that doesn't get enough money from the state because you are disabled, or maybe you are working 2 jobs and you still don't have enough money to get proper groceries, and you think to yourself that the immigrants are the problem, that they came here and they are taking the state funds from you. Well, and that they deserve to get treated like that. Don't forget that it only starts with the minority that everybody hates. After a while, the state will start putting up more and more subgroup of society into the scapegoat group. Listen to this quote from Pastor Martin Niemöller, who was a prominent Lutheran pastor in Germany. In the 1920s and early 1930s, he even sympathized with many Nazi ideas and supported radically right-wing political movements. It shows the danger of indifference clearly. First they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there is no one left to speak out for me. The fourth characteristic is supremacy of the military. Even when there are widespread domestic problems, the military is giving a disproportionate amount of government funding, and the domestic agenda is neglected. Soldiers and military services are glamorized. America has always had a history of spending the most for its military, but right now it's worse than ever. America spends even more than China, Russia, India, Saudi Arabia, the UK, Germany, Ukraine, France and Japan together in a fiscal year. Like, I don't even know what to say. That's a lot of money. Like, that's a lot of money America spends. ICE alone received about 10.4 billion in funding in the last fiscal year, according to MS Now. Germany is also stocking up on military personnel, but it's still in the beginning stages and nowhere near, I don't know if it even could be anywhere near the American standard, and is in correlation to geopolitics. The fifth characteristic is rampant sexism. The government of a fascist nation tends to be almost exclusively male-dominated. Under fascist regimes, traditional gender roles are made more rigid. Opposition to abortion is high, as is homophobia and anti-gay legislation and national policy. In America, it's clear. The current president is very focused on defending women from gender ideology, extremism, and restoring biological truth to the federal government, which in itself is sexist. While the law tries to focus on transgender people, laws like this will inherently also attack cis women. There have already been a lot of cases where cis women had to undergo sexual harassment to prove that they were real women because of their use of the gender-specific bathrooms. This, next to the abortion ban in many states, stands on its own. In Germany, as an example, abortions are in a grey zone. Technically, they are legal, but because of a loophole, most doctors can still perform them. There are a lot of more like in-depth facts and history and context why this is. I can make a whole another specific video on this if you'd like, just like let me know in the comments. But going back to sexism in Germany, there are still like a lot of laws or even societal rules that make the empowerment of women rather hard. So it's kind of wishy-washy. The sixth characteristic is controlled mass media. Sometimes media is directly controlled by the government, but in other cases the media is indirectly controlled by government regulation or sympathetic media spokespeople and executives. Censorship, especially in wartime, is very common. The US government does not directly control mass media due to the First Amendment protection of free press. However, the American media landscape is characterized by high concentration of ownership among a small number of private corporations, which leads to different forms of influence and control. All news outlets keep afloat by ad revenue. This leads to a prioritization of profit over public interest journalism. Local news is also declining significantly, so Reporters Without Borders state. Media regulation in Germany is organized on a federal basis. That is why there are 14 independent state media authorities. These are government funded. The German media landscape has also many non-government funded news outlets, ensuring less dependency on government issues. What's a bit problematic is that most of those news agencies use the same source, the Deutsche Presseagentur, but this agency isn't controlled by a government. The seventh characteristic is obsession with national security. Fear is used as a motivational tool by the government over the masses. The US exhibits a significant focus, often described even as an obsession, with national security, a concept that has expanded to encompass trade, technology, immigration and cultural issues, elevating the perceived threat level and influencing policy across administrations. This preoccupation stems from a psychology of fear, a superpower's desire to control global dynamics, and responses to genuine threats like terrorism, leading to broad security measures and strategic shifts, but also criticisms about distorting priorities and fostering paranoia. While Germany has been historically cautious and restrained action in security policy, recent global shifts, especially the Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022, have led to a significant and public re-evaluation and intensification of its focus on national security. The country is now actively engaging in a process often described as the Zeitenwende, or a leaning process towards a more serious and robust strategic culture. The eighth characteristic is that religion and government are intertwined. Governments in fascist nations tend to use the most common religion in the nation as a tool to manipulate public opinion. Religious rhetoric and terminology is common from the government leaders, even when the major tenets of the religion are diametrically opposed to the government's policies. It's a clear rise of Christianizing government in America, even though America was founded on the concept of religious freedom. Intertwining Christian beliefs with the government processes go against the fundamentals of America. The US is constitutionally a secular nation with the separation of church and state, meaning it has no official religion. But it's also a culturally Christian nation with a majority of its population identifying as Christian, leading to ongoing debate over the practical influence of religion in public life. Germany has always been a Christian state, with the party Christian Democratic Union of Germany, CDU, being the biggest party for the last few years. The ninth characteristic is corporate power is protected. The industrial and business aristocracy of a fascist nation often are the ones who put the government leaders into power, creating mutually beneficial business and government relationships and power elite. In America, it's very clear the richest man on earth, Elon Musk, was a huge supporter of and he was also very intertwined in government going on, even having his company Doge intertwined in security measures. Lobbying in Germany is a legitimate representation of special interests to influence political decision-making. Primarily regulated by a mandatory and publicly accessible Lobbying Register Act, which became fully effective not that long ago, only in January 2022, and it's been strengthened by amendments in March 2024. The 10th characteristic is that labor power is suppressed. Because the organizing power of labor is the only real threat to a fascist government, labor unions are eliminated entirely or are either severely suppressed. And America has always had a tendency to dislike unions. A significant factor has been a decades-long, well-funded campaign by the corporate and wealthy classes to portray unions negatively and undermine their power through legal and illegal means. The 1981 firing of striking air traffic controllers by President Ronald Reagan is often cited as a pivotal moment that emboldened private sector's employers to resist union more aggressively. The traditional American narrative of self-reliance on the American dream clashes with the collectivist nature of unions. There is a cultural belief that success comes from individual hard work, and seeking help from outside organizations like unions can be seen as a sign of weakness or an attempt to get something without earning it. In Germany, it's quite the opposite. There are many unions in Germany. Membership is voluntary, with around 17% of workforce being members. Members are very politically active. The 11th characteristic is disdain for intellectuals and the arts. Fascist nations tend to promote and tolerate open hostility to higher education and academia. It is not uncommon for professors and other academics to be censored or even arrested. Free expression in the arts is openly attacked, and the government often refuses to fund the arts. In America, there is a recognized strain of anti-intellectualism showing disdain for intellectuals, education, and the arts, often linked to populist politics, distrust of elites, and valuing over practicality over theory. There is a recognized strain of anti-intellectualism in America showing disdain for intellectuals, education, and the arts, often linked to populist politics, distrusts of elites, and valuing practicality over theory, and this is through and through complex and contested, with many Americans valuing arts and education deeply. This manifests as a suspicion of the experts, challenges to science and history, reduced art funding, and cultural narratives that downplay intellectual pursuits, creating tensions between populist ideas and traditional knowledge. Germany has had a strong tradition of supporting intellectuals in the arts, considering them an indispensable part of the country's culture. This support is a deliberate contrast to the Nazi era, during which artists and intellectuals faced severe persecution. The 12th characteristic sounds a bit funny. It's called obsession with crime and punishment, and one could think it's about the book from Dostoevsky, but no, it's about actual crime and then the consequence of the crime being punishment. Under fascist regimes, the police are given almost limitless power to enforce laws. The people are often willing to overlook police abuse and even forego civil liberties in the name of patriotism. There is often a national policing force with virtually unlimited power in fascist nations. Well, America has a clear obsession with crime. Despite a general decline in national crime rates since the early 1990s, a majority of Americans often believe crime is increasing nationwide. This perception is heavily influenced by media coverage and political rhetoric, which shapes public fear and policy demands. Aspects like mass incarceration and a focus on punishment rather than rehabilitation also play a huge role. The US has the highest incarceration rate in the world, housing more than 2 million people in prisons and jails. This era of mass incarceration has resulted in sentences that are often disproportionate to the nature of the crimes committed. There is a strong societal emphasis on retribution and being tough on crime, rather than rehabilitation and addressing the root cause. Approach is highlighted by the high recidivism rates, suggesting the current system often fails to prevent future crimes. Recidivism is a weird word, but it basically just means after you have done a crime, you've gone to jail, and have come out, you are more likely to do the crime again in America than in any other state. The German justice system is more focused on rehabilitation rather than harsh retribution. The 13th characteristic is rampant cronyism and corruption. Cronyism is a weird word once again, but it basically means being a nepo baby but for friends. So if you have friends in high places, you are more likely in a fascist state to become a person of power or gain a lot of power because of cronyism. Not uncommon in fascist regimes for national resources and even treasures to be appropriated or even outright stolen by government leaders. Issues of cronyism and corruption are present in America's politics and business, as in most nations, and public concern about them is currently high. While the US ranks highly on global indexes compared to most of the world, experts point to serious ongoing concerns and a perceived decline in anti-corruption safeguards, so the Chicago Council on Global Affairs states. Germany has generally low levels of corruption and ranks well globally, but faces criticism and issues with cronyism, especially in political appointments and public procurement, alongside specific corruption risks in areas like land administration and lobbying, which is often highlighted by scandals. Scandals like perceived conflicts of interest and opaque rules for politicians' secondary income, leading to calls for stricter transparency. The last characteristic is fraudulent elections. Sometimes elections in fascist nations are a complete sham. Other times elections are manipulated by smear campaigns against or even assassinations of opposite candidates, use of legislations to control voting numbers or political district boundaries, and manipulation of the media. Current President of the United States of America, President Trump, has tried to run a fake electoral scheme in the 2020 elections, so NBC News. There have been no obvious fraudulent elections. While there are discussions of fraud in the 2024 elections, nothing, as far as I know, has been found. While in Germany there have been discussions of fraud election in the 2025 election, nothing has been ever found as far as I could find. So now we have analyzed both states by the Dr. Brit 14 characteristics of a fascist regime, and you can now decide what you think. I'm not going to tell you what you think, but I would love for you to tell me down in the comments what you think. Why I chose America and Germany. China, America and Germany are the highest total export values in the whole world, so they are huge global players when it comes to the gross domestic product, and that's why it's very important to keep a close eye on politics of those three. And China is already hands down not a democratic country. It's almost a dictatorship, or it's a dictatorship point blank, and that's why it's scary when we see America move into such a direction, similar with Germany. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked this video, and if you watched until the end, leave a money bill down in the comments below. Thank you so much. Bye.